Hi. In this session, we'll be setting up System Center Operation Manager 1801 from scratch. So in our earlier video, we installed System Center Operation Manager 1801 from the VHD evaluation, which largely automated all of the steps, including installing SQL, configuring the services accounts, as well as installing all the services and everything. So in this video, we'll be doing that from, as I mentioned, from scratch. From the installation media. So what we have here, we have a system that I've named SCOM1. It's running Windows Server 2016 Data Center with the desktop experience, and it has already been joined to my domain. So let's go ahead and get started. So once you're here on the server, as you can see, we have my server manager is open, so we're just going to go ahead and minimize that back behind here. I've already gone ahead and launched the Operation Manager 1801 setup. So you would need to copy the media down to your system somewhere and then launch the setup. In my case, I have copied that down to my E drive and just made a folder named SCOM, and then I have the files located locally there, and I would just launch the setup. So back over here on this setup screen, I'll just go ahead and click install. And then here I have several different options for features that I want to install. So I can install the management server components, operation console, web console, and reporting server. So I can install all of those on this same server, or I can kind of spread those options out. In the case of this server, I'm only going to deploy the management server on this server, and I'm not going to install any of these other roles on the server. So depending on what roles and features you choose to install on the server, your prerequisite requirements will be different. So if you want to read more on supported configurations, there is a little link down here at the bottom that'll send you out to the web to give you some details on that. For my purposes, I'm just going to install the management server. So go ahead and click next. And then here I'm getting prompted for where I want to install it. I'm going to install mine on my E drive and go ahead and click next. And then that'll go through and verify prerequisite, make sure that I meet all the minimum requirements for the roles that or the features that I want to install. In my case, I do, but those prerequisites would change depending on if I selected other roles. So say, for example, if I would have selected the web console, that has a lot of prerequisite for various different components of IIS. So I would have got an output telling me that I need to install all these various different pieces. And then also on this same screen, down here at the bottom, there's a little link where you can go and read more about the full system requirements for the various different features. So I'm going to go ahead and click next. Then on this screen, I'm getting prompted to give my management group the first management server in a new manager group. Is that if that's I'm making a brand new environment, or if I was adding an additional management server to an existing management group, I could select the second option here. Since in this case, this is going to be a brand new SCOM environment, I'm going to give it a new name. So we're going to name this management group, we'll name it SCOM SAC for semi-annual channel prod. That sounds like a good name to me. So let's go. Well, actually no. Let's do this. Let's name it Lewis Tech Views dash SAC dash prod. Long name, but I'll use that. Sounds good to me. And let's click next. And then that's just showing us the valuation license terms, so you can kind of read through that. And then accept the license agreement. And then if you want to read more about their Microsoft's privacy statement surrounding this product and other products, you can click the link here to go out to the web to read that. You also have a link over here if you wanted to print that out, as opposed to trying to read it all in here. You can print that out and store it somewhere. So I'm going to go ahead and click next. And then here I'm being prompted for where do I want to host the database, the operational database. So if you've been following this series, you may recall that way earlier in these series of videos, I created a SQL server running, I believe, SQL Server 2016, I want to say. It could have been 2017, but I don't remember. It was one or the other. But that server was named SQL1. So that's the server that I want to use for this deployment. So I'm going to go ahead and type in SQL1 and leave it at the default port. So once I put that in, it'll go out and try to attempt to connect to that database server. If you have deployed your own SQL Server as well, one thing that you would had to do is actually open up the firewall ports to allow SQL Server traffic out. Otherwise, you may receive an error on this step as it's trying to go out. But I've already opened those ports up for the purposes of this. So that it's gone out and connected. It's gone ahead and enumerated the default paths that I have set up on that SQL Server. So it's detected that I'm hosting data files on the F drive and I'm hosting log files on the G drive that exists locally on that server SQL 1. So I'll continue with those defaults. And then also it has just automatically populated the Operation Manager database name. So you can change that name. So for the purpose of this, because over time I may have multiple management servers pointing to this same SQL instance, or multiple management groups pointing to the same SQL instance. So I'm going to actually name this underscore SAC-prod, so I can distinguish between the do I get an invalid character? Which is it, dash or underscore? Maybe the dash, I think it doesn't like. So, okay, I got to do underscores. So I'm going to name it Operation Manager underscore SAC underscore prod. So if I do at some point decide to host multiple different management groups on the same instance, I will be able to distinguish those databases by the name, by manager group, by the data that's following the Operation Manager name. All right. And in the real world, you probably wouldn't do this. You would host it on their own separate instances, SQL instances at a minimal, or totally different server entirely. But since this is a lab and I may need to test various different things, I'm probably gonna end up hosting it on the same. But we'll see as time go on. So other choices here is database size. So here I can specify how large I want my database to be from the start. So by default it's set to 1,000, so roughly 1 gig. I'm gonna go ahead and make mine 10 gigs to start. It'll just be a lot larger to begin with. And let's go next. So on this next screen, now we point to where we want our data warehouse database to live. So, and in a lot of cases, this may be a different instance. It could be a different SQL server entirely, or it could be the same one. If it is the same one, it probably would be recommended to have it on different drives or different physical drives than the Operation Manager database. But again, since this is a lab, in my case, I'm actually going to just place it on the same SQL server in this case. And I'm also going to follow that same strategy where I'm going to give it the manager group name following the default name so I can identify it easily later. And I'm also going to grow this one to 10 gig to start as well. All right. So the other option you do have, if you have multiple manager groups, you do have an option to share the data warehouse database between multiple management groups. So that there's an option here, like if you wanted to point to another existing data warehouse server and share that with multiple manager groups, that's a possibility where you can do that. So like if you're doing something like that, then doing this right here in the naming that I'm doing, that probably wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. It would be actually hosting multiple management groups. So tagging it with a management group wouldn't make a lot of sense in that case. But yeah, so I'll leave everything else at default and go ahead and click next again. And then on this screen, I'm getting prompted where it's asking me for the various different service accounts that I will be using for the servers. So if you're going to be using like domain accounts for these, so that you would have to pre-create these domain accounts in your environment in order to provide credentials for them. So I'm going to go ahead and start putting these in now. So for this environment, I will be using a domain account for all of the services. So I'm going to go ahead and start putting in those. And so I've already pre-staged a few accounts. So SCOM, I think I named it Action Prod. Put in password. That may be right. And then for domain account, for the data access servers, I will also be using the domain account. So I'll go ahead and change that. So go ahead and put my domain / my account. So SCOM prod. It's the name that I'm going with. Username, password. And then for data reader account, kind of following that same pattern. SCOM read prod. And finally, I get SCOM write prod. Alright, so at this point, you would normally just go ahead and click next. I may receive an error here. I'm not sure, I don't recall if I've already done this, but one thing to be aware of that you typically would want to have, I think it's a requirement to have this account that you use for this account to be a local administrator on the server. And it also is quite common to have the action account maybe be a local administrator as well. But I may have already done that. I don't recall if I did, but let's go try it and see if we get an error. Oh, no error. So that means I've already done that. So let me just show you what I'm referring to. So normally, say if you did get an error at that step, I would have came over to, say, computer management. And let's give that a few seconds to load. All right, so in computer management, I would go to local users and groups. And then under groups, there's administrators here. So I would add those accounts in here. So I've already done that. So I have a group, SCOM administrators prod, that has my action accounts and those service accounts in this group, and they are inheriting local administrator rights on this server. So that is a if you get like a red X or error at that step, this is what it's normally is complaining about, that you're not a local administrator on the system. So easy fix, you just launch computer management and then add it into the local administrator groups, and then you should be good to go. All right, so let's go ahead and turn that down. So here on this screen, this is just telling us that, hey, that Microsoft collects certain data, and you can control that, but you can turn that off at a later date. Just not on the screen, it's just making you aware of it here. And then again, if you want to read the privacy statement regarding some of that data collection, then they have a link here to go read up on that. So go ahead and say next. And then here you have an option to tell it if you want to use Windows Update or Microsoft Update or not. I'm going to go ahead and turn that on for this environment for now. And then again, more privacy statements, so you can read up on that if you want. Go ahead and say next. And then it'll just give me a brief overview of what it's about to do. And then I can go ahead and hit install. So that'll go ahead, go through and try to perform all the steps. And this will normally take several minutes, or yeah, it takes quite some time for it to go and do everything. So as you can see now, it's going through. It's going to go connect to that SQL server, go and try to configure the database and deploy that down. Then it's going to deploy various different management server pieces. It'll deploy various different management packs out to those databases, deploy the data warehouse database, and then do the final configuration steps. So I'm going to go ahead and let this run, and then once that completes, I'll be right back. All right, after a few minutes, so that completed successfully. So after an install, you see we have a small warning message here, just letting us know that, hey, you're on a evaluation copy. And then you can use the set SCOM license commandlet to actually add in your license, so you can go ahead and license the software when you're ready, or just run out your evaluation and then get rid of the environment, I guess, once it stops working. So that went pretty smooth, so go ahead and close that out. And yeah, that's how you kind of install SCOM. It's pretty straightforward. So we haven't configured anything, so it's just kind of a base installation going. So in the next session of this series, we will be adding an additional management server to this group. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching. Hopefully this has been useful, and I'll see you in the next one.